Hello race fans, welcome into Studio 3 for another edition of Backseat Drivers. I'm Alex Weaver here with Jonathan Merryman and Zack Albert from NASCAR.com, my two experts here on the table. And we normally do this at the start of every single season, but we are almost halfway through the 2019 season, and I want to go back and revisit some of our superlatives that we talked about earlier this year. First one that I want to start with is the biggest surprise, and we're going to make this positive and negative for this season.
All right, so my positive, I think, is Hendrick Motorsports turning it around. I think we looked at that West Coast swing earlier on in the season. We're like, oh, this is not gonna play out well for the rest of the year. They got it turned around, and they have that win at Talladega under their belt with the 9 car. I'm really impressed with Alex Bowman and the run he's been able to make, and you really, between Chase and Bowman, they look formidable every single week. So I'm impressed with the turnaround. I think that they're on the right track. I think HMS is trending in a positive direction.
I'll kind of dovetail on that because I do agree they have turned it around, but even though they haven't quite had the results, in the win column to speak of, but mine's a little bit different take on that. One of the biggest surprises to me was how Chevrolet performed at the first race at Talladega and just, broke up what had been a, Ford stronghold. I mean, they had won 7 races in a row at that track coming into this, and they put their heads together. They put some of their alliances aside and said, look, let's all do this for the benefit of Chevrolet. And the way they put it together, had a 1-2-3 finish led by Chase Elliott. That was the most impressive performance. And somewhat of a surprise, but I think the biggest thing was just how they executed and the way they executed that well.
Well, the biggest surprise for me was if you think back how Ford has worked together so well over plate races, super speedway races as they're called now for the past 5 years. I mean, it's been a Ford train, and the biggest surprise is that it took them this long to figure out that's what to do. Now, Hendrick was on to something at Daytona because they teamed up with Gibbs, but Chevy stepped in and said, let's get it done. So that's a good one.
It surprised me in Talladega that it was a new story coming out of the Chevy camp that they were like working together.
Hey, what a novel idea.
Why didn't we think of this before?
We had just seen SHR execute, just like as well as you could do it. And to see those tables turned was kind of the surprising thing.
All right, flip side for the 2019 season, the biggest surprise in a negative way.
You go first.
You want me to lead on
that? I want you to lead on this one.
I'm surprised that, through 15 races, we haven't seen a Stewart-Haas racing car in victory lane, which is not to say that they haven't
or
been.
a Kevin Harvick win.
Especially. But having won, he won 8 times last year. SHR won 12. I mean, it's surprising. All that said, I would not be completely shocked to see them turn it right around. Other teams have made some gains, and they've had some issues catching up to that. I think that's part of it. I think there's always kind of cat and mouse. And some teams will hit on things and other teams, won't pick up on that quite as quickly. So I think they're behind in a little bit of that. But I mean, the personnel that they have, I feel pretty assured that they're right on, real close to connecting on that.
I think you have to be perfect. You saw it with Joey Logano 2 weeks ago when we were racing at Michigan. He had a flawless race. He was perfect. Kevin Harvick was not, and that's what cost Kevin. And that's the thing that's cost Kevin, 3 or 4 wins maybe this year. And you think back to, Denny had trouble in Texas or Kyle Busch had trouble in Bristol, but they struggled early enough in the race they were able to overcome it. All of Kevin's problems have come in the fourth quarter of the game, so to speak. So
the closer is not close.
Yeah, but that is not my negative. We just got done talking about Chevy and the positive that we saw at Talladega. I think the fact that they only have a win there at Talladega, I think, coming in, we were expecting, Kyle Larson's going to have a couple wins, Chase Elliott's going to have a couple wins, and now with the rise of Bowman and then Kurt Busch coming over there and kind of, being the co-flag carrier for Chevy with Chase Elliott, I expect a little bit more out of them. Now, like you said, it's still, we're still midway through the regular season, so anything could happen. Definitely look for more performance out of them second half of the year.
All right, well, already some surprises this season so far. Let's look at best organization that we have this 2019 season.
I'm going with Penske. I know you don't agree with me.
I don't. I'm leaning towards Joe Gibbs Racing, and I think part of that is, the way that Kyle Busch has come out of the box, but also the way that Martin Truex Jr. has clicked as well. You've had Denny Hamlin, right there in the mix, and I think Eric Jones is one of those that's right around the corner to maybe get that win and lock himself in the playoffs. But top to bottom, I think they've been right there.
See, I disagree. I think Penske, and mainly because of, the 12 car was strong early on in the year. I will agree that he's kind of, tailed off a little bit. But the 22 and the 2, when Joey won at Michigan, I was sitting there thinking, oh, this has got to be his third or fourth win of the year. It was his second because he's been up front. He's won so many stages. He's up there battling with Kyle Busch, who's won 4 races for that regular season points championship. And Brad, and just whatever him and Paul Wolf are able to do with, they have the ability to call a perfect race and dominate. They have ability to, make strategy calls and be bold and take chances. So I think between those two guys, I think that edges them out a little bit in front of Gibbs and the rest of the pack.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I kind of lean towards JGR on this is look at what they've also done in the Xfinity series with Kyle Busch winning and Christopher Bell just taking off and taking the ball and running with it. So I think if you look at across national series, I think you can even make a stronger case for them.
Well, I don't think I can disagree with either of those organizations. They've won every single race but Talladega, so they are definitely the strong ones in the garage. All right, let's look at best driver. We already got a little heated on this before we started filming, so who do we think is the best driver so far this season?
I'm going with the 22, even though he doesn't have the wins. I know I said it earlier, just when he won.
But we were surprised by that he only had 2.
Well, that surprises me, but the fact that that in itself just shows me he's been up front. He's been getting points in stages. Maybe he hasn't won as many stages as this person or that person, but he's placing. He's getting stage points, and those are just as key because you think about that regular season championship, the 15 points that carries over. Now, granted, if you win a race, you get 5 bonus points that carry over, but it's the fact that Joey Logano's second race win surprised me that it wasn't more. I think is evidence enough that he's up front. He's getting finishes, and he's been there and he's been consistent in that effort.
All right, Zach, put your dukes up.
I was going to say stage points are great and everything, but I mean the win is really the thing, and that's where I don't see how you can't pick Kyle Busch just in terms of scoring 4 Cup wins, and then you dip down on the into the other series, and he's got 3 out of the 4 Xfinity starts he's converted into wins. 5 for 5 on the Truck Series side as well. So
200 wins this year, hit that mark.
I mean, it's just in terms of performance, and getting into victory lane. The driver of the 18, I think, that's my leaning, and I think that's where you need to go.
I think you're wrong.
That's okay.
All right, well, we've hit on best driver. Now let's look at breakout driver. Which driver do we think has kind of come into his own and really made a name for himself?
I think you guys know who I'm going to pick, so I want to hear you.
We do, and it's very similar to my pick too. So Alex Bowman, just the way that he has really taken hold in this season, and he has been right there on the cusp of getting those wins, and a streak of 3 straight runner-up finishes. I think he's been the one, but I also wanted to give a nod to, down into the Xfinity series to Cole Custer, who had only 1 win in each of the previous 2 seasons, and this year he's already broken out for 3 and really injected himself into the championship discussion. And I think it kind of shows what caliber he is as a driver, and that he's destined for the Cup Series. When, we'll see, but I think in terms of a breakout season, it's been Cole Custer.
I'm going to pull from Xfinity as well. I think Tyler Reddick, me and you were kind of talking before this. Is he a breakout guy who won the championship last year? I think so because, I don't think a lot of people expected him to win the championship, A. B, we came into this year, Christopher Bell. Everyone had him circled as the odds-on favorite to come out and win the championship. Now Cole Custer and Tyler Reddick, it's a dogfight every single week. We're seeing some of the best racing in the Xfinity series that we've seen in a long time. Not to mention Tyler Reddick's up there, fender to fender with guys like Kyle Busch who, come in and sometimes have a tendency to dominate these races. That hasn't been the story because Reddick's been up there and, really just giving it to him every time Kyle's in the series. So, you had several options you could pick from here, but the chip on Tyler Reddick's shoulder is huge for a champion coming over back into another full-time ride, switching teams. So I think that's only going to get bigger until he wins his second championship at the end of the year.
Yeah, and the switching teams thing is not to be discounted either, because I think there was a little bit of unknown in going from a ride where he won the championship and then turning to a different organization that he thought would position himself better for potentially graduating to the Cup Series. And
I was one of the guys too. I was like, I don't know, is this he won? He won a title. So, I've eaten crow on that as well, and I'll raise my hand. I'll be the first one to say he definitely, proved me wrong. My expectations were not that high, and now I think he's the odds-on favorite to win that title.
We have a couple of names that are now fighting this year for the Sunoco Rookie of the Year. I know you guys can't actually pick that. That's going to be determined by points. But if you had your choice for best rookie so far this year, who would it be?
I'm going to go with Priest. I don't think he's had the finishes to kind of indicate where he's
had the magic moves on the track.
He's been able to dodge a lot, but he's been caught up in quite a few things as well. Even in the Open with his Rookie of the Year competitor Hemrick as well. So those guys have been fighting it out, and it's fun to watch. I think as we go into the summer and get closer to playoff time, I think Priest will kind of surge ahead a little bit. I think you can look at the way that the 37 car is running and just how JTG as a whole is clicking and kind of maybe forecast a little bit. But I'm gonna take Ryan Priest.
I give a slight edge to Hemrick, and I think that's kind of where the points stand right now. True, he has been a little bit more consistent than Priest has. I think Priest has 3 DNFs to just the one for Hemrick. Both of those are, drivers are not where they want to be. Clearly, they've had some bad things that have befallen them. But I think Hemrick has had a little bit of speed, a little bit of the edge there in terms of what Richard Childress Racing has been able to do. They've been able to put it together for qualifying, haven't quite been able to put it together in terms of race results. But the fact that they're there and have shown that performance, I think they're chipping at it.
All right, well, we are 15 races into the 2019 season, and gentlemen, we are not far from the playoffs.
Creeping up.
I know.
We have drivers that are outside of the playoffs right now that may have a chance to get in and break through into that playoff bubble. I'm going to read the last 4 that will be into the playoffs if it stands today. That would be Suarez, Byron, Larson, and Johnson. And then the bottom, so if you're going from 17 down, it would be Newman, Jones, Menard, Stenhouse, Austin Dillon, and Chris Buescher that are outside. Who out of those outside groups, starting with Newman, is most likely to get into the playoffs?
Well, yeah,
Do I have to fall on the sword first?
One bad race, so this is throwing darts at a dartboard in the pitch black,
is a
basically.
guess.
Yeah, this is a really interesting playoff bubble. I mean, we've had some compelling races in the years past, but the complexion of the playoff picture is really interesting right now. I think if you're looking at kind of 2 different ways. I think if you're looking at somebody who points their way in, I think you have to go with Newman in terms of not making too many mistakes, staying, keeping his nose clean, and just really needling and annoying you into the playoffs. The way he kind of does, he sticks around and he's going to be there. In terms of who might win with, get in with a win, I think I look to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and what he might be able to do at Daytona, which he's done in the past. I think there's a chance there, and I think there's also a chance for him as strong as he's been at Bristol as well. So there's a couple of places where I could see him picking that up, and those are the places. So tough playoff picture, though.
All right, I'm going to counter every single point you have for Stenhouse.
I thought you might.
The guy that won Daytona last year, Eric Jones, is really good at Bristol. Eric Jones, a guy who historically, if you look back, I think starting at Chicagoland for the past 2 seasons, has rattled off top 10s like crazy. He's got to make something happen. He's got to make something happen soon. This is his time of year. I kind of compare him a little bit to Tony Stewart in terms of when it starts to get hot outside, he really, really starts to work his way to the front. And he's had a couple, good runs. I think if you're going to put your money on somebody, I think it's going to be Eric Jones.
Won Daytona in July last year. We're heading to Daytona.
I don't think he needs to win to get in.
Okay, you think he can point his way in?
I think he can point his way in.
All right.
I think the tougher part of that is who of those, bottom 4 that are like the last 4 in right now,
could fall off.
Who's that going to be that's going to knock out of that list? Because those are some still fairly heavy hitters that are in that group.
They're heavy hitters, but it's not insane to think that we might not see any of those guys in there. It's Suarez, Byron, Larson, or Jimmy. And I'll tell you what, Larson and Jimmy need to get it together.
Those are the two that surprise me the most, that they are that close to the bottom.
They've got to get it together. They know they've got to get it together. I mean, I don't think we're not breaking news to them. Oh, I need to run better to be secure in the playoffs. Duh. But it's all within a race. One bad race, and then you get down to that 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th, and you're thinking about a stage or 2 stage finishes could potentially knock you out and put another guy in. That's how close this battle is.
Well, and that cutoff between Jimmy Johnson and Ryan Newman is what, 3 points?
It's 3 points.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just think Larson and Jimmy have to be very careful moving forward.
I just think there's also a lot of wild cards that could sneak up. We've got 2 road courses that can change the complexion of everything coming up in this final stretch to the end of the regular season. We've got Daytona in that mix. We've got the Bristol Night Race. There are several different races that can really, the playoff picture can really hinge on those. So I think there's still a lot of wild cards, a lot of time left before we get to the end of that.
Well, when we start talking about the playoff picture as well, I mean, you don't just need to make your way into the top 16 if you want to make a run of the championship. You need to bank playoff points, because nothing's going to save you once we eliminate 4 drivers and go down to the round of 12. So urgency's up, not just to make it in, but you need to start winning stages and you need to start winning races.
All right, now I know you guys are going to moan at me when I say this, but let's pick our championship 4. I think I have an idea of who you two are going to put in your championship 3, but we have to pick 4. So go for it. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I'll take Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, Chase Elliott, Martin Truex Jr. I think Chase finally breaks through and gets through his funk that he seems to get in while racing at ISM. He got passed by Matt Kenseth 2 years ago when it looked like he was going to, win that race, and then he got caught up, and I think it was Clinton Denny kind of got together and, ripped the whole side off the 9 car. If it wasn't for that, he would make it to Homestead. Who knows what would have happened, but I think those 4 guys are going to be there.
See, I had written down Kyle Busch, I'd written down Joey Logano, I wrote down Martin Truex Jr., and then I wrote down someone else. And it's just a matter of who is that other person going to be. And I think, to your point, I think Chase Elliott has a good shot at it. But I think there's also a space there for a veteran that could also get into that mix, and I think it's Brad Keselowski. And I think it's also Denny Hamlin that have some of the best chances of that. I'll be interested to see if a young guy could maybe, string some races together and just survive and advance through those rounds and make it happen. And, is that a Larson, or is that, even a William Byron? I think that still a lot of wild cards to go, but I think those 3, that's a good building block at least.
Who do we think is going to hoist the trophy? I love that trophy. It's one of my favorite ones in all of sports. Who do we think is going to get it this year?
All right, you go first.
I get this one. I think it's going to be Kyle Busch, and I think he's just been a dominant force, and I think that doesn't stop. I think, early in his career, I know the playoffs were kind of a sticking point for him, but I think in this format, with the car that he's got, the team that he's got, crew chief, everything, I think it all lines up for the 18 and championship number 2 for them.
It's also Kyle Busch. I don't
also
know if
that.
I would count him
all
out
of that.
ever.
I'm going to go with Brad Keselowski. I think him and Paul Wolfe, they're on a sneaky path right now.
Well, I think one of the common denominators that we can agree on here is that the people that we're talking about have won championships. Yes. and are going for either a second championship or potentially more down the road. So I think the people that we're talking about have been there before, have been in that type of pressure, and have performed when that pressure is on. And so I think it's there's a little element of veteran experience and having faced that pressure before.
And look, there are no wrong answers unless you're incorrect.
That's true. It's a guessing game at this point because there is a lot of racing left, and we're heading to wine country to race on a road course this weekend. You can catch all of the action coming up from Sonoma on FS1 this weekend, all weekend long. We'll see you guys right back here on another edition of Backseat Drivers.